Someone says, what is tone of voice? I think it is liberation. It gives you the permission and the ability to define yourself. You can be anything you want. Define yourself and really go for it.
Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to a fantastic friend of mine. I've known him for about 4 years now, and he's incredibly talented, and he gets to play for his job. It is Martin Williams. Okay, Martin, would you tell us a little bit about who you are? Who is Martin Williams?
It's a very long story. Accidental copywriter, really. So I've knocked around in bands for years. I'm from Cheltenham Spa, darling, as we call it. Been in Manchester for about 13 years now. So yeah, knocking around in bands for years. Flirted with success on occasions, had a couple of deals, all that kind of stuff. Got absolutely fed up with it. Did what lots of people do. Did a TEFL course, teaching English as a foreign language. Buggered off to China. Met a guy over a ping pong table in a city called Shantou, who had an export agency, and he used to do these little micro indoor helicopters, the remote control things. He was selling loads of them to his brother in the States. So I did some work with him, had to come back to the UK, bought a container load of them, stood in a shopping centre in Cheltenham selling micro indoor helicopters. People saying, where's the string? Where's the string? Well, there's no string. Ended up getting involved in sunglasses of all the things, because these guys, I went over to America to meet them, had a lovely weekend in Las Vegas with them at a trade show, and saw this sunglasses brand, came back to the UK, bought a load of sunglasses, rented some space southbound on the M5 at Strensham Services, a retail merchandising unit, 8,500 pairs of sunglasses. I was thinking people bombing down to Devon, bombing down to Cornwall, sun in their eyes, money in their pockets, hope in their heart, would buy my sunglasses. And they did. Queues of people. And after 3 days, I was thinking, wow, this is going to pay off. This is brilliant. And the site manager came up to us and said, Martin, I've got some good news and bad news. I said, what's the bad news? He said, we've got to relieve you of your site. You're polluting our footfall figures, whatever that meant. I said, I got a contract. He said, doesn't matter. Read the small print. He said, but the good news is we can give you another site. I said, great. I said, where is it? He said, you can go 70 miles southbound, or you can go over the road. And 70 miles southbound just wasn't viable. So we went over the road, and I spent the next 3 months not selling sunglasses to people coming back from Cornwall and Devon, going back to the Midlands and the North in the rain, skint, with no hope in their heart. So there are 7,000 pairs of sunglasses in the lockup in Wootton Under Edge, melting. It's probably melted by now. I essentially just threw away the key to that. The very last day, I got a phone call, and the phone call was from a mate of mine, called Derek Strachan. Derek runs an agency in Totnes in Devon, and the agency is called Big Star. And he was swamped with work, and I'd worked with Derek in the past in Cheltenham in sort of a record shop, and he'd gone on to London, worked for Warner's and stuff. And so he'd set up this copywriting agency in Totnes. He was swamped with work. He said, Martin, am I going on a bit?
You crack on. Keep going.
He said, Martin, I can't cope. I know you write. Can you help me out? I'd just been sat at the side of the M5 northbound, not selling sunglasses for nearly 3 months. So I said, yeah, anything, please. Come and save me. And he was great. And I admit it, embarrassingly, I didn't even know what a copywriter was. This was 2008-9. I had no concept of the concept. And Derek was great. And he sort of mentored me and trained and just gave me as much work, baptism of fire really, as much work as I could cope with. And brilliant. And I loved it. And I love working for myself. And I love being creative because I'd been in bands for years. So that was a sort of important part of what I did. And it was nice to actually get some money for it, which is which is rare if you're in a band. And then I got a domain name. I found a domain name, which I stumbled across at ukcopywriting.com. Don't look at the website, it's shite, but that helped me set my own thing up and get going. I moved to Manchester and just built the business in Manchester. Bumped into a couple of reprobates, as you do, birds of a feather, knocked around with Andy Natton from 603 Copywriting and Ben Hampson. We used to, have meet for drinks and stuff and moan about the same stuff essentially. 3 successful freelance copywriting businesses, and we just said to each other one day, why don't we actually combine forces and strengthen numbers and capacity and broader skill set? So we set up Hampson Natton agency off the back of that, and we ran a thing called Creative North 2019, which was brilliant. We had the brand comms director from Slack come over, keynote it. That was sort of the Royal Exchange. We had 2020 lined up. Rory Sutherland was coming from Ogilvy. He was going to be our keynote speaker if we could have ever got him off stage. We were warned I'd need a big shepherd's crook to put him off because he doesn't stop talking. But we had all that lined up and we got COVIDed, and then it hasn't quite kicked in. So that was the Creative North reference in the ad. And so we've been together as an agency for about 4.5, 5 years almost, probably. And brand tone of voice is quite a big part of what we do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So that is an interesting journey. And I think with all of us with creativity, we kind of find ourselves meandering into the things that we've done a little bit, don't we? So it's lovely to hear that from you. Okay, so in terms of, we're going to look at tone of voice today a little bit. So why is tone of voice important?
Well, go to the next. Well, this is a very minor tone of voice from that first slide there, and there's going to be a very minor change. So we just shifted the tone of voice very, very slightly. If you could go on again. These are just some general slides. We'll just say, okay, it's how you express yourself. This is stuff we all kind of know. I'll come on to more interesting stuff in a minute. Next, please. Right, so tone of voice is 2 things. It's tone and it's voice. There's no defined definition. There's no absolute definition of what tone of voice is. This is mine, really. Your voice and your tone. Your voice is you. It doesn't change. It's static. It's constant. And your voice expresses you individually and brand-wise, your personality and your values. And that's a sort of underpins everything, really. And the tone is, you dial it up, you dial it down. It's more flexible. It moves with regards to channel and audience, and it's things like mood, emotions, expressions, rich. Accent, I think, is really interesting. There's a guy called Louis Grenier. I don't know if you follow him. It's called Stand the Fuck Out Marketing, I think it is. And he's French. And he was talking about how for years he battled to suppress his French accent and speak as neutrally and Englishly as possible, before realising that actually it was a great, great attribute. And so he hams it up now, quite deliberately. And it works, it's great. The tone is what lies on top of the voice and flexes. And it's really important because it could go on. It's a feeling. Tone of voice is a short answer. Tone of voice is a feeling. It's a feeling you create, share, and you leave. What you say, how you say it impacts how people, because it impacts on the actions that people take. And we'll look at some examples of how it does that shortly.
Yeah, so you do a lot of this in terms of you do workshops and things with the company, don't you, and that kind of stuff. So talk to us a little bit about kind of some good models of tone of voice.
Yeah, I've got some.
Kind of stuff that you do.
Okay, if we go on, that's a succinct answer to why tone of voice is powerful. The Telegraph with their words are powerful, choose them well, nice and clear and telegraphy. Deliveroo, pizza. I mean, 2 stark contrast there. If you've gone again, please. I mean, genius. That's a very successful expression, tone of voice, and the next one is a very unsuccessful one. What's the point? What's the point? Okay, so that's to answer that question.
Yeah.
These are sort of the headlines, really, of why tone of voice helps you connect with your audience. When Anna Pickard came to the Creative North, she said something that really resonated with me about Slack's tone of voice, and underlying it all was this: we see you. It's being identified, it's being recognised, and that connection, I think, as part of the mood and the intonation and the expression and the word choice is what it's all about. It's we see you. Helps you define who you are as a brand. I'll talk about that a little bit shortly. It's not definitive, and some people think it is, but I don't think it is. It helps you stand out, obviously. Inspires your customers to act. Human and trust. So it gives you personality and it builds trust. So to answer your what is tone of voice, I think these are good ways of summing it up. And the next question was, how do you go about?
Yeah, the models and that kind of thing of tone of voice.
Yeah, which is interesting again, because there's no agreed or set way of doing it. So if we could, this is one way of doing it. So you scale between two endpoints, 4 main dimensions of tone. There's another way. Personas, not personas, what they're called, archetypes. Sort of. We've got a client at the moment, and they've done some brand tone of voice stuff themselves or with someone else, I'm not sure. And they came to us and they said, we're the lover archetype. We want to express ourselves as the lover. Oh my God, so they're a B2B events company. And I'm thinking, this could go one of two ways. But that's going to be a really interesting challenge. And I think what they mean is they're lovable and they want to be loved, and they're bright and vivid and engaging. And I think that's great, but I'm not sure if adopting the lover tone of voice, which is a sort of sensualist type tone of voice that you'll get from sort of chocolate brands or lingerie or something like that, would necessarily work for B2B. But tech,
a little bit
corporate events, we'll see. So this is another way that people sort of look at, helping define how you speak. What kind of personality am I? And there's a couple of others. If we could have a quick look. Nick Parker, who also spoke at Creative North, mate of ours, and we helped him with this a little bit. He defined 11 what he calls primary tones of voice, and each of them has a set of attributes. No brand is a singular, will rarely be a single primary tone of voice. It would be a blend of two. And there are ways you apply these tone of voices and you mix them together. Obviously, it demands an element of creative input as well to find a brand's. So, for example, as I mentioned, that the lover brand sort of sensualist, really, sort of chocolate brands will use Cadbury's and people like that. Firestarter, you'll reckon, Brewdog kind of own that space because they fucking well want to. Storyteller brands, Jack Daniels is a great example of that. Simplifier brands, or a lot of tech brands go for that. Neutralizer, please store your luggage under the seat in front. It's a sort of neutralizer tone. It's very factual, very impersonator. If you sell crisps or gin, you might be inclined to take an impersonator brand. You'll see that a lot. Warm Friend, loads and loads of brands. Warm Friends, Skype, and lots of people. It's that softer, kinder, friendlier arm around the shoulder. Mate in the pub. Chat. Purposeful, a lot of tech brands. Energizer, Fizzy, a lot of younger brands. Playful Child, well, the one that really springs to mind is Innocent Smoothies, the wackaging kind of cutesy, playful child writing. Done to death, really, isn't it? I think I've had enough of that. Straight talker. You can always tell a Yorkshireman, but you can't tell him much. The Ron Seal type brand. And that's another model. A guy called Justin Blackman and Abigail Woodcock, I say they do it online kind of thing, and they break it up into three areas: authority, accessibility, outlook. There's no standard way, but what Nick did, and I think what these people have done, and what other people try, is to codify brand tone of voice, so it stops being this kind of weird cloud of meaning and words, and you can find a structure and a way of eliciting it. We never tell anyone their tone of voice; we elicit it in a workshop. Their tone of voice.
Yeah.
So if you can look at the next slide, please. I feel like Chris Whitty. He's from Gloucester. He's from Gloucester, apparently. I didn't know that. As mates of mine say, I remember him from the pub when we were kids. Okay. A guy called Chris West, fantastic. He's got an agency. He wrote a book called Strong Language, which is really, really interesting. And this is the little model he represents in it. And what we find with our customers, we're talking about how to generate the tone of voice. As we come in at this stage, this 1,000 foot level to do a workshop, a company comes to us and say, oh, we need to get our brand tone of voice together. And we'll sit down in a workshop and run it and ask all the questions and try and find out what, how they want to project and how they want to be perceived. And it's really, really powerful because you're asking questions they often won't ask themselves anyway, or ask each other. So you just sit back, and watch, let the conversation unfold and take notes, and they'll colour it in themselves. They'll make it work themselves up, and it's good. And we just apply this rigour to it through the codification of the 11 primary voices, and then this stuff down here is the writing itself, is the fulfilment stuff. I really enjoy these areas particularly. I'm just nosy, really, really nosy. I just like putting people on the spot and asking them questions and finding stuff out. But a really interesting thing about this is the stuff above that is really it doesn't get talked about, and I think it should be, because you can't just magic up a tone of voice. We talked about it's your personality, it's your values, and if you don't come to a brand tone of voice workshop or start thinking about your brand tone of voice on the basis of your personality and your values, you can apply any kind of tools and tricks to impose a brand tone of voice, but you need to have done all that thinking, that 10,000 foot thinking, and there's a lot of work that needs to go into that. In the first place, there's a thing I'm really into at the moment called jobs to be done, which is looking at your customers and finding the trigger points that you need to meet to help them achieve the future self that they see. So understanding your audience, absolutely essential. It's not just about your internal stakeholders. So there's audience work and there's values work, and it all feeds into this brand tone of voice.
So when you get a brief in, is that how you would approach it?
We would do our best to get involved as top level as possible.
Yeah.
So we're just not being fed assumptions and fed presumptions.
Yeah.
So that we can get under the skin of it right at the beginning and really challenge people as to, because it's strategy. Strategy is choice. It's decision making. It's what you choose to do. It's what you choose not to do. And I don't necessarily think tone of voice. You're not necessarily eliciting this pure natural essence of people's personality. Business is about choosing a space, occupying that space, owning that space. And if I'll show you the examples that come up, there are clearly decisions that have been made up here that feed into generating the tone of voice. And I think that those are really important questions that need to be asked. But what we're doing at agency, me in particular, I'm really trying to get upstream to the source.
Yeah.
Swing upstream. Because that's where the information, that's where the useful stuff, thinking is done.
Brilliant.
So we can have a look at some.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's terrible. I'm really shit at things like that. Is that readable? So The Economist, classic headlines, classic, just brilliant copy. But it doesn't come from nowhere. There's a strategic decision being made in their positioning as to how they want to be perceived, and it feeds into the expression and the word choice and their tone. Another one. Just genius. And these are just expressions of that positioning of where they want to be seen and perceived. A couple more. Oh my God, so good. Hyper Swiss. So they've looked at the market and they've looked at all the challenger banks and they've just gone, upstarts, you're playing it at kids, and they are doubling down on their tradition and being a proper bank and not getting sucked into a war of coolness or a war of contemporariness, or they're using other businesses' positioning and language against them, which I think is just fabulous. There's a couple more here. I mean, how good? How good is that? And what a gift it is to have a client. See, if a client hasn't done the thinking in advance, you go to a Brand Tone of Voice workshop, and you send them some ideas off the back of it for sort of top line messaging. Unless they've done the thinking that leads to that, when they get something like that, they just think this is ridiculous. They haven't got there themselves in their own minds to produce and share as innovative and interesting copy as that. So again, saying about part of the positioning. There's a hostel in Amsterdam. I had a lost weekend there about 20 years ago. I've got this thing about Midori now. You know that green liqueur? Oh my God, I can't even look at it. And just even saying it. Very bad weekend. Anyway, stayed at the Hans Brinker, and the Hans Brinker is a bit shit. But it loves being a bit shit, and it's shit and it's cheap, and that's what they sell, and they really go for it. And they're not trying to be, they're not trying to pretend that they're anything they're not, and it's really great. They've just totally committed to it. There's another.
Have that quite honestly not the best. I like that.
It's just great, and I think brilliant humour. I mean, humour's a great connectivity. That's that Anna Pickard. I see you. It's humour's a fantastic metaphor. You can share a lot in a very few words if they're humorous. So what else we've got here? Oh yeah, I mean, brave, brave, and kind of stupid, but kind of fun and kind of worth putting a slide in a presentation about. Probably some sort of pop-up brand of some great big brand, a bit like who's the PlusNet, the Yorkshire, but they're just part of BT, really, aren't they? A sort of a pop-up brand, really, for a big horrible, a lovely corporate. This might be the same. Let's have a look at some more. Ron Seal. I mean, they own that expression now, don't they? How many times you go to a meeting and hear that? If you click on, it might reveal something. Yeah, this lot of sort of own that playful child space that has served them incredibly well over the years and probably made them a huge amount of money being able to be identified as quickly as that. This lot as well, yeah. I mean, it's a nice thing about going to London, isn't it? Stood on a tube platform reading the Jack Daniels ad on the opposite side. It's a sort of highlight. What else we got? Yeah, sort of warm friend, purposeful warm friend. Famous, I mean, it's sort of famous for that. Very human, very kind, not too sickly like some can be if you over egg it. I love this. I absolutely love this company, Saddleback Leather. I don't know. I've come across them years and years ago, and it's a guy who went down to Mexico with his dog and slept in his car, and had some guy. They had a contract put out on him and taught English, and he found these leather bags. And the origin story is just immense, and he really, really goes with it. And it's for slight outsiders, not radical outsiders, and people who want to be individualistic and all this kind of stuff. And what a line. They'll fight over it when you're dead. I mean, brilliant. Have a check out the Saddleback Leather website and the About Us page and stuff. And he's built a massive community, and people take their bags around the world. They've filled them at the bottom of the ocean. They take a photo on top of a mountain, or bag's been bitten by a shark or something, or trampled on by an elephant, and they share these images with pride, and it builds this, and it's all part of their origin story and all part of this tone of voice that they've slightly sort of outsider tone of voice, us against the world. They worked out. I doubt if it was intentional. It's just intuitive and natural for them, but it's worked. Genius. These guys make scientific testing machinery. And instead of calling their products the FS127-B8, they've just cracked convention open and thrown it into the road. And have won enormous amounts of attention and I'm sure enormous amounts of business of having. It's not the courage really. It is courage to do this, but they've done it incredibly well. There's a lot of business out there want to be courageous. I'm sure when you deal with your clients, and we're game changers. We're revolutionaries. And we want to stand against. And it's really easy. And we see it in workshops all the time. People make a beeline for the craziest, maddest possibility possible, and they spend the next day pulling themselves back from it, because as they get more and more scared of being out there. And if you're going to be out there, do it really, do it well. And these guys have done it well. Okay, are we good?
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, we could go on all day about this, really. We kind of gonna round up a little bit, so we have got some time for questions. But so before we finish, could you just talk to us like one piece of advice for these guys as they're thinking about maybe their tone of voice, or how they're going to explain the tone of voice of somebody that they're working for through the piece that they're doing, that kind of thing? What kind of advice would you have for these guys?
Yeah, well, have a great. I mean, I'm presuming it's a room largely sort of freelancers and small businesses, and which is a fantastic advantage, I think, because you don't have to, go through committees, and they say a camel is a horse designed by a committee, and often we find that. That's what happens. But smaller organisations and organisations in the creative field, I think you've got a lot more liberty and a lot more freedom. And I think that's a word that someone says, what is tone of voice? I think it is liberation in a lot of ways. I think it gives you the permission and the ability to define yourself. If that is a strategic decision, you can be anything you want. Define yourself and really go for it. So I'd say with certainly small organisations, play very, very much on that personality and values side. And don't be scared to express yourself. Unlike other companies who you're in competition with probably, or want to be in competition with, who have to jump through hoops and not offend anyone, or not be funny, or not try and be funny, or not try and look stupid, or take risks. And so I think it's a great opportunity to do that, and look at people out there who you admire and you think are doing it really well. Don't copy them, but copy them. No, just take the most interesting attributes. Take the most interesting attributes and see how they might apply to you. I just love Stuart Lee. I don't know if any of you read his book, How I Escaped My Certain Fate. It's just a genius piece of writing, and I think the circular storytelling that he does, and a lot of the the kind of linguistic tricks he plays, and the sort of logical tricks he plays are really, really interesting. So I don't steal any of those sometimes. So I don't know if that's an answer or not. It is an answer. Yeah,
no, it's good. It's good. And finally, from me, before we open up to the floor, I mean, hey, let's just quickly go there. AI, is it going to kill? There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. In short, we're screwed. Great.
No. If you have to look at the next slide. Oh, I hope so. Yes. So so what's the ROI on brand tone of voice? Why should I bother paying you any money to do anything? Just sit in a room listening to people and writing notes. And I say, well, look, I've done this research, and I've got the proof. I can give you the increased customer lifetime value by 32%, increased engagement 18%, customers willing to pay up to 13.5% more. Now, while that should be true, it isn't. I want to chat GPT, and I put in, give me some ROI figures on using a good brand tone of voice and URL citations, please. And it came up with this. I thought, oh, gold dust. I can smear our website with that and bombard people with emails, and because what's not to love about a 23% higher return on investment? Well, you click those links, they're dead. And if you put any kind of I searched the arse off these to try and, because I just think ChatGPT was telling me porkies, telling me what I wanted to hear. which I thought was really, really interesting. Don't get me wrong, amazing tool. I'll tell you a little story. 1973, in San Francisco, Jefferson airship, got banned from playing in a public park, doing a gig in a public park, because there was a blanket ban on amplified music in San Francisco. And outside there was these people with their placards shouting, "We built this city on orchestral music. We built this city on orchestral music." It just makes me laugh that Jefferson Airplane corrupted that campaign phrase and made a massive hit out of it a few years later. In 1982, the Musicians' Union in the UK banned synthesizers. They thought that that's the death of the musician. It's just amazing to think, isn't it? No drum machines, no synth. So to answer the question, although this is bullshit,
Good for clarification.
I do think it will play an important role and it will change jobs, and it will probably take a lot of the grunt and grind out of work, and it might. And I'd like to think, like electronic musical equipment has freed up and allowed loads more people to be creative and do amazing things and make the world a better place. I'd like to think that tools that take that level one thinking, that system one through system one and system two, take that sort of stuff you just have to go through and do it out of the equation, frees you up to join more dots and do interesting stuff. So while I'm not very keen, I'm a bit disappointed with it at the moment, despite it teasing me with these figures. I think there are definitely ways that my colleague Andrew Natton is down on AI big time. He's just started a newsletter, a Substack newsletter, and he's given it a right kicking. The thwack of size 15 leather boots on Windows was my review. I thought that was quite good, that. Anyway, here's a fact that is true. The next one, please. The writer did a survey of loads and loads of sort of business owners, and 60% of businesses value it as much or more than their visual identity. And it's always been the Cinderella of brand guidelines as brand tone of voice. It gets to like half a page at the end. Write like you talk. It's the normal advice. I don't know if you've ever recorded yourself. I've been recording that. When I listened back to it, I was going to be, oh my God, you wouldn't want to write like that. So I think there's definitely an argument for really fleshing out the brand tone of voice. And it's great because you get a new starter in your company, a bigger company, you get a new starter, you employ a PR company, a marketing company. It's called the verbal identity. You can flow out all this brand tone of voice through people and through channels. And a really, really powerful thing about tone of voice is it reaches all the parts of an organisation. It's the Heineken of internal comms, in that everyone is impacted by a company's brand tone of voice because they're using language all the time. And new CEOs, I was reading, also in the writer report, are really, really massive drivers. So if companies have a new CEO, they'll want to impact the culture within an organisation. That's often one of the first things they do. And getting your brand tone of voice is a really powerful way to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's possibly why that contributes to that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. I mean, we've just scratched the surface on a bunch of stuff there, so there may well be some good questions. So let's open it to the floor if you guys have got any questions for us. Yeah.
When you're writing, are you sector agnostic, or should a writer be sector agnostic? Or are you better to specialise?
I think a writer shouldn't be, because I think the broader palette you've got, a well-furnished mind, David Ogilvy said, that good writers should have a well-furnished mind, and that is seeing a really, really broad picture from lots of different perspectives and trying to piece it all together in interesting and novel ways. If you're sector specific and you only write about one sector, I think that probably limits that. From a business point of view, I say there's a really great argument for being niching and being sector specific, because there's a guy called Blair Enns, and he wrote a book called Win Without Pitching, and he's got the two Bobs, David C. Baker, I think is his other Bob, and they write about niching and being a specialist, and because you niche, you pattern match very quickly, And when you're stood next to a generalist, people would prefer the specialist every time. So from a business point of view, it probably makes sense to niche. You become a specialist, you become the expert, you charge more for it, and you can adopt a more consultative, valuable role than just fulfillment and writing out the words, doing content marketing strategies. So two answers for two different people, I think.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Hello.
Just sort of on the point with the visual identity and kind of chicken and egg, which comes first, do you find that you're often brought in at the same time as visual identity, or that a lot of the work that you do is almost revisiting it and then it outgrows the visual identity? How do you work with the visuals?
In an ideal world, we'll be brought in at the same time and work hand in hand. We love designers because they're practitioners like we are. Often a business will think, oh shit, we need to sell more stuff. Oh God, how are we going to sell more stuff? Oh yeah, the internet, that's a really good way. Who should we, let's get a web dev company, because they do stuff on the internet. They sell stuff on the internet and we'll do it through them. So you end up with this, here's a website, here's some real estate. We need some lorem ipsum we need replacing. And that's a way of doing it. I would argue it's not the best. And we'd be at the beginning, because our language can influence the visuals, and the visuals can influence the language. And I think there's a beautiful dance there if you get the opportunity.
We've seen like a mad rise of like hyper personalization of like brands and businesses. Do you see it flipping the other way again at some point? Like every
Probably.
brand's trying to like seem like a person now.
Yeah.
Do you see that wearing thin, I guess, with people, and then was it the hyper Swiss that
Yeah.
steered the back the other way?
Yeah.
Do you see that overcorrection happening again down the line?
Yeah, anything. When others are zigging, you zag, and all that kind of business. That hyperspace isn't new. That's a little bit old, but I think they took on the challenge of the challenger banks head on there, bravely and brilliantly. So good that people show their brand in presentations at Donor Voice events. Yeah, probably. I think there's always rotation and all that kind of stuff. But I think the world's changed a bit. I mean, comms has changed and channels have changed. And I don't think hyper-personalisation is going to go anywhere. I just think there might be other people. Hello.
Well, can you give advice how to sell provocative idea to clients?
Be really, really funny. Yeah, I think, like I was saying earlier, people want to provoke. Of course, we want to stimulate responses from people. That's sort of the business we're all in, isn't it? Andy Maslin, the copywriter, said copywriters are in the business of behavioural modification, but I don't like that. That sounds a bit manipulative, doesn't it? What we're trying to do is provoke people out of their, just make people think, isn't it? Make people feel. It's a feeling. So I think, be provocative.
Even if it's aggressive stuff, yeah?
No, that doesn't mean aggressive. That means make people think. A little kink in the universe, or a little kink in language can make people stop and pay attention and care. I see, you're funny. There's a roof. I was walking down the road the other day, and there's some guys with wheelbarrows and putting scaffolding up, doing the roofing on this house. And I just sort of, daydreaming like I was. And their van was parked outside, and I just thought their van said their strapline for their company was how inopportune. I'm not going to take it. And written on the side of their van was protection from above. And I thought, I'd use you as a roofing company. We've got a very similar sense. I thought, what a genius line. That sort of religious tones to it, and the practical benefits of having a non-leaking roof. So, so I saw that. I thought it was really funny, and I thought, you're my kind of people. I like you. If I was going to get someone to do my roof, I'd probably call you, if only to congratulate you, condescendingly. on the strapline you use to your business. So it's just provoking people, I think, but it doesn't mean being aggressive, or it just means breaking out of that daydream we all walk around in.
Okay, we've got time for one more because I saw one more hand. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was great. I'm currently in a fight because I'm trying to bring more humour into my web copy, and all the SEO tools are telling me to write it a different way and make it more basic and more understandable. So it's like the web stuff saying, you know, if I'm bringing in my sense of humour, that pushes it away from the ability for rankings and stuff like that.
What business are you? What business are you?
Illustration and design. But I'm also a stand-up comedian, so I'm trying to bring that comedy voice.
Yeah, stuff SEO. Google's smart enough these days that all this keyword stuff. Yeah, get your title and description right.
Yeah.
Think about your body copy. Just rip into it. Go create. Be what you're selling. Humour, aren't you? You're selling. You're selling connection and connect with the copy, I think.
Yeah, I was just getting like I run it through this SEO thing.
Yeah, it's like Yoast stuff and all that. Yeah, and it's really important. It is. You do need to rank, and I guess there is an argument that you're not in like insurance or something where you're never ever going to rank against people who spend billions and billions and billions. You're in a relatively small field, so you want to be above 15 other people. So there is definitely an argument for getting your fundamental SEO right, but on the body copy, I think it's not a sort of world I particularly enjoy, but I think Google is so much more sophisticated these days. It can see what's similar. It can read you from a person's perspective and rewards people for being more human.
Can I just offer a suggestion in case it's helpful? You could always say, this is what SEO wants me to say. This is what I want to say.
Right.
Put it into ChatGPT. You told me to say this, but I'm funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Martin, for sharing.
Pleasure.